Monaco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So this is the Wednesday night live stream. I'll wait a little bit here. There's no one around at the moment. So central banking propaganda I'm going to talk about, and Q&A. So just one person here right now. Billy's back. Say hi, Billy. Say hi to everyone. We'll wait a bit. I don't think I told people I was going to do it today, but I forgot to tell people this morning in my video. But what I plan to do now is always do it on Wednesday night and Sunday night. So we're slowly getting people on, 6 people so far.
Thank you very much, Christine. Well, we've had some spirited debates in the last couple of days.
So we've got Sergio, evening, Sergio, 8 do corner. Hi, 8 do corner. Tim Martin, hello from Tampa. Oh, hi, Tim. Nice to see you. I'm in a bit of a rush today. Wednesday evenings, I play 9 holes of golf at my golf club. There's like a little, just 9-hole competition, and we just finished. But I live within walking distance of the golf club, so it's pretty convenient. Hi, Oscar from Sweden. Oscar Sverd. Philip East. Hi, Philip. Hi, John from Kansas City. So we got someone from Kansas City, someone from Sweden, Danny from Brooklyn, Al Lopez. Hi, Al. Pam I am from California. Good. We're getting further and further afield. Iran Yurt from Turkey. Great, great. So, and another one from Sweden, Graveen. Guten Abend, Mario, aus Frankfurt. Hallo, Dan, Kurt, wie geht's? Wie geht es Ihnen? Chris Wiebers from Amsterdam. So, multinational live chat. The reason why I entitled it Central Banking Propaganda is because today I was watching, I didn't really watch it, but I saw they had a conference for central bankers somewhere in Europe organized by the ECB. And they had Mario Draghi, they had the Japanese central banker, they had even the guy from the Fed, Jay Powell, and other central bankers. And one thing I've noticed with time, I started out in the business in the late 80s, early 90s. Central bankers weren't as important. Central banks would only announce once in a while if they're going to change rates. But they didn't have all these conferences, all the press conferences. And I think one of the reasons they're having this now is because they need to keep the propaganda going, because the system is like kind of corrupt and it's failing. So they need to keep justifying their existence. So let's see here. Dax, evening, Mario. Hi, Dax, Richard Mack. They're in deep crap and they know it. Yeah, and I even noticed, Richard, that last week, I think the Fed announced that they're going to have a press conference after every meeting from next year. Up until now, they only had a press conference every other meeting. So it just goes to show that they really need to keep the perception of things. They need to keep informing the market, changing commas here and there, changing sentences. And the worst thing is that, you know, the people in the banking world, the investment world, the mainstream media, they buy into this rubbish. I mean, sometimes I listen to these press conferences by central bankers, And it's amazing that you don't get anyone from the media asking any difficult questions. Sometimes I wonder, I think they're just ignorant of, they don't, they're so much in a bubble that they don't realize that the system is, the fiat money is basically kind of rotten. Or maybe these organizations, mainstream media, they hire people that really are not really bright or up to speed with what's going on. And that's why when we have crisis, everyone is really surprised, because they're all like got their heads in the sand, so to speak. Hi, John Corner. I am Rolf. The whole bankster mafia is going down. Yeah, I hope so too, because it's not sustainable. It's a little bit like in the 70s, I think in Europe, and especially in the UK. Even though I didn't live here in the UK, I heard a lot that the trade unions were so powerful in the 60s and 70s, and the economy was just grinding to a halt. So eventually the power of the trade unions went downhill. I hope that the power of the bankers also goes the same way as the trade unions. Richard Mack, why would the media ask difficult questions when they just read scripts paid for by the bankers? Yeah, that's true. All the Bloomberg, CNBC, Fox News, they're financed by the bankers. John Corner, hi, Maneko. I just wanted to ask about airdrops and how do you get them? Thanks again. I assume you mean the EOS or EOS airdrops. Well, as long as you're registered and you have an EOS public key and private key, but it also depends on how many tokens you have. All the different and these airdrops are not by EOS, they're by projects that are going to use the EOS blockchain. So some of them might give airdrops to people who have more than a certain amount of tokens, but you don't have to do anything. If you have the public and private EOS key, they should just come into your wallet. So yeah, nothing to do. Just wait for them. Mila Vanessa from Indonesia. Hi, nice to see you here. So yeah, we've got people from all over the world. Greg D. Mara, why can't this go on for a lot longer, as long as all countries are doing the same thing? That's true, and that's why it has gone for longer. I've spoken about fiat money inflation in France back in the 1790s after the revolution and prior to Napoleon. They kept it going for about 5-7 years in France, but that was the only country doing that. Right now, the whole world's into it. Yeah, it could go for longer, but I don't think it will go on forever, because it's not natural, it's not sustainable. It's a bit like a drug addict. Yeah, he can live for a while, or an alcoholic. They can keep going for a while, but at one point they'll just collapse and die. TNT TV, will the tax cuts and real estate value keep the economy going for a few more years? Or do you think other factors will overpower and cause a recession? I assume you're talking about, I don't know, what are you talking about, the US TNT? But the tax cuts, I don't know. The thing is, the tax cuts are being financed by huge deficits. And if interest rates start rising like they have, I already think the US is in a recession. The only reason it isn't is because there's a huge government spending, and that's like pushing up the GDP. So yeah, I think it's not really too clever. Don't get me wrong, I'm for tax cuts, I'm for very small government, but from what I hear from Trump, he's increasing spending. Now he wants to come up with a space force. I thought he was actually joking when he said that. Space force. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. I personally think it's bogus that people went to the moon in the late 60s, early 70s, because if they went to the moon in 1969, why couldn't they just go again next week. The technology is so much, more advanced now. So I don't understand that. So I think it's all. I think the Space Force by Trump is just another excuse for more government spending. Because if the government doesn't spend money on war and defense, now the Space Force, the economy collapses and implodes. Kevin Beltramaro, can all major currencies peg their currencies to the SDR? No, Kevin, because the SDR is basically a basket of all the major currencies. So it's a percentage of dollars, yen, euro, Chinese yuan, sterling, Swedish kroner, Swiss francs. So how can they peg it? It's a basket of currencies. So the SDR is just a basket of the currencies, so it can't be pegged. J000114, I was hoping for a good opportunity to accumulate a little more metal at low spot price. Good buyer's market right now. Yeah, that's true. It has been frustrating. What happened on Friday was quite outrageous. But a longer term, do you really want to give your hard-earned wealth? Do you want to lend it to the bankers? Because that's what basically keeping fiat money in the bank is, lending money to the criminals. Jeffrey Gotts, because we won't have Saturn V rocket. We don't have a Saturn V rocket. Yeah, I heard I heard something on YouTube. An astronaut, I forgot his name, but he said that they got rid of all the technology to go to the moon. So how do you do that? Why did you do that? I mean, it's ridiculous. Greg D, I agree with you, the fake moon landing. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was quite young. I was about 4 when Neil Armstrong supposedly stepped on the moon. Thank you, Patrick, for the donation. I appreciate it. Yeah, so yeah, I was about 4. I think from what I remember from my sister and my dad, I think they stayed up with one of my great aunts. She was about, at the time, 70 almost. And she was with them watching the TV, and she said, "Oh, this is not real." And they laughed at her, but I think she was right. But I remember I bought into it when I was a little boy. I had the books, all the photos of the moon landing. I had a T-shirt. But that's they made a lot of money. So I guess NASA now, or the the Space Force in the U.S., they're going to get together with Hollywood, basically, in my opinion. That's what it's going to be: Hollywood and the military-industrial complex together again. Max Zager, the silver gold manipulation can go forever if seller have an agreement. There's not much there. Well, I don't think so. Markets always win in the end of the day. Yeah, they can keep it going for a while longer. Don't forget, they had the London gold pool in the 60s and early 70s, trying to keep gold at $35 an ounce, and they couldn't keep that going. Richard Mack, moon landings are filmed at Norton Air Force Base. Probably. Where is that, Richard? Never heard of that base. A 2 million pound thrust rocket is far from fake. Well, the rockets weren't fake. The fake part is that they never got to the moon. Robert Sipos, the central bank spent 40 billion in the past 7 years to prop up elaborate schemes about space and to make people believe the Earth is not flat. Well, yeah, there's a lot of debate now about what the shape of the Earth is, and I won't get into that, but some of it is quite credible. Gold, silver. I believe the gold, silver age is coming. Yeah, I agree with you. Gold, silver. TNTV, NASA is super corrupt. Yeah, I mean, and we all fell for it. I did. I mean, When I went to in 2005, I went with my wife and my daughter. We went to Disney World, and then we did, we drove to the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral. Uh, we went to Busch Gardens. We did all the Florida things. It's a great money spinner for NASA, the tourism, but it's not real. Arjun Karzan, you guys are crazy. We did go to the moon. Well, that's fine, Arjun. You can believe in it. I don't. GG, if the monetary system collapses and let's say silver is at really high price, how would we be able to buy small quantities of groceries with silver coins? I'm sure you'd be able to buy groceries with silver coins. Yeah, I mean, with let's see, I've got a silver quarter here from 1902. I mean, right now it's worth about, I don't know, $3-4 to get one of these. So if it went to worth $50, yeah, you could buy a lot of groceries with that. Why would it be? What would be difficult about it? Sedona TV, are you retired? No, I'm not retired. I'm doing these videos. I'm trying to do this full time now, and I do other things as well. So to do with the markets. No, I'm not retired. I don't really want to retire. Why retire? That's another thing they brainwash you with, so that you start, you put money into their schemes, pension schemes, and government, it justifies government spending, the Social Security. But why should people retire? If you're healthy, why stop? Richard Mack, Norton Air Force Base was a United States Air Force facility 2 miles east of downtown San Bernardino, California. Oh, thank you, Richard. GG, funny how despite all the technological advancements we've made, as well as science and research, we might end up using money which is thousands of years old. Yeah, well, that's gold and silver for you. It will always be money. Good evening, Juru84. Greg D, people don't do critical thinking anymore ever since they killed Kennedy. Yeah, I think the reason for that is the mainstream media, television, newspapers. Everyone seems to believe, what the BBC says, and that's why I don't watch mainstream, television anymore. So I think we really need to ignore all the because it's all we're told that in the West we have a free press, but we don't. It's just as bad as the old Soviet Union. It's just all propaganda, and that's why people don't think anymore. Johnny Ringo, how do we end the Fed? Well, the Fed was created by an act of Congress, so you have to make sure you vote for people who would like to abolish the Fed, like Ron Paul. Unfortunately, well, the other way is to keep exposing the Fed, and that's why I do these videos. I know I'm not in the U.S., but if the Fed were to be abolished, all the other central banks in the world would probably kind of implode. So that's why the Fed is at the head, kind of the head of the snake, even though the BIS is important as well. Chung Chen, Mary, what happens to the everyday person during a crash? I'm 18 and never been through one. Well, nothing really. I lived in Brazil. We had a few currency collapses. As long as you're not really exposed, to the markets and have a lot of debt, and and if you haven't protected yourself, and by that I mean being outside the system, you should be okay. A crash is just a revaluation of values. The world doesn't end. Pam, I am. How can we protect our retirement, Mario? Well, I mean, I assume you're in the US. Well, the thing to do is try to get some of that money out if you can. I know there are penalties. Maybe put some of it into gold and silver, but it's difficult. Or maybe try to save outside the retirement system. Keep buying gold, silver, and coins. Maybe don't expect to get much from it. I know it doesn't help, but and hopefully it will be okay. But what I meant to say is that don't expect too much from it, but Max Sager, what I meant was that if the big yeah. Richard Mack, I haven't watched TV in 10 years. Saves money not paying for it. Yeah. Tim Wilkinson. Hi, Tim. What's up? Have you got a question? If you don't give me a shout out, I'm going to tell my mom. Nice to see you here, Tim. I did see you. Gravine, what ethnicity are you and where do you live now? Ethnicity. I'm in London. I'm originally from Brazil. I have a Brazilian and Italian passport. Ethnically, I'm of Italian origin, so Italian ethnicity, and also Portuguese on my mom's side. My granddad was Portuguese. FlowNet07, are you worried about European banks going bankrupt? What about Italy, Spain, and France? No, I hope they all go bankrupt. The banks, I'm not worried. I'm not investing in them, and I don't have too much money in them. But it's not only in Europe that they're like zombie banks. All the banks in the UK are zombie banks. The banks in America are zombie banks. The banks in Japan, they've been zombie banks for the last 30 years. So they've only been kept alive because of the central banks and the governments. We've been, financing them, unfortunately. No, I would love to see the banks go bankrupt. They need to go bankrupt. Gear OG, if 0.5% of people buy silver and gold now, how high in percentage of people to start to buy silver before there is no more silver and gold? That you don't need too many people to start buying physical to get a run on gold and silver. That's why they keep doing these things. They want to keep people away from it. And there's very few people who own gold and silver. That's a good point. Robert Cheapos, the Mars landing probes are fake too. I think they can get to Mars. No, I don't know about the Mars situation. Just talking about the moon. Gold, silver, were the elites driving us after monetary collapse before gold standard? Pam, I am. Yes, I'm in the US. Money markets. Yeah, money markets, real estate. Yeah, real estate is, will always be there. I think Jim Rickards talked about the very rich in Europe. They have gold, real estate, wine. So, yeah. TW, can you answer PH2 question? Can you walk through a scenario where the central bank gets us out of this? Is there any possibility? No. No, there's no way out for the central banks. They're cornered, and that's why they continue to manipulate the markets. The way out for them would have been to let the well, yeah, there isn't a way out. Um, they were going to go under in 2008, the central banks, and they had to be saved by us, the taxpayer, through debt. But there's no way out for them. No, there isn't. Uh, there is no way out, unfortunately. They've already done the damage. They've already printed all the fake money. And the only way to keep it going is to print even more fake money. And if they don't, the whole thing implodes. Because in a fiat money system, you need to keep the debt running, because you have to pay old debt, because the debt is not redeemable. It's irredeemable debt. So the only way to pay it off is with more debt. So it's a complete Ponzi. So there's no way out. Alofton 877, what is the right amount of physical silver to hold? That's all personal, Alofton. I mean, I don't know your circumstances, but a good amount. I mean, instead of saving in fiat, save in silver. Uh, 100 Roadhouse. I am old enough to remember when my uncle showed me a gold bar. He paid $35 for an ounce for it. Yeah. Well, that must have been in the 60s. Oh, gee, when do you sell gold and silver? Do we sell back to fiat if the price skyrockets? Well, you don't. I think it's you exchange it for assets when gold is, everything implodes and gold and silver are still doing well. Then you go and you buy productive assets. You buy real estate. That's when you sell it. Or of course, if you have an emergency, you might need to sell some before the system resets. Pam I am. What should we buy gold in? Coins from where? Pam I am. Yeah, I recommend coins. Just you have to look at gold. There's quite a few on the internet, reputable dealers in the US. If you Google it, you probably find the top ones, and yeah, have a look. I think, yeah, I'm not too. Monex is a good one. They're in California. MONEX. Pohaney. The central banks are part of a global corporate-controlled debt-based system which thrives off fiat money. Everyone's hoodwinked. It's a huge con. I agree 100%, Paul. I've made a lot of videos about it, and I'll keep making more videos trying to wake people up to it. The problem is, like I've spoken about it many times before, is that people are not educated in the nature of money, and it's not complicated. But they make it, the universities and they make it seem complicated, but it's not, because they don't want people to understand the scam, and they use like technical jargon like QE instead of basically just saying it's money printing out of thin air. Juro 84, how can gold liberate humanity when most of the gold is in the hands of a few people? I don't think most of the gold is in the hand of a few people, actually. The central banks, they only hold like about 30%, not even 30% of all the gold that's been ever found. I think there's a lot of people who hold gold. So, but it's not even a matter of everyone having gold. What gold does is that it keeps the system honest, and it allows people to work and get rewarded for their labor and ideas with money that is honest. That's how it does liberate. You don't necessarily have to have everyone have gold, but I don't think it's as centralized as you think. GG, where do you buy gold from in the UK? I like Atkinson's bullion.com, Atkinson's Bullion, also goldinvestments.co.uk. I think they're good. I think also Bullion by Post is good in the UK. Licks 59. Yeah, that's for PAM-IM. MPEX is one of the largest and trustworthy here in the USA. Yeah, MPEX, AppMex. There you go, PAM-IM. JJ Monaco 64, do you still think Cliff High and Bo Pony are reputable? I noticed you made a lot of Cliff High videos a long time ago. Yeah, I did do the reviews of the Cliff High Alta reports. He stopped doing those. You know, I never thought he was always right, but I thought he had some good forecasts. Yeah, he hasn't been around anymore. He stopped doing them. Bo Pony, I think he's got the right idea about the system, you know, what's going on, but he keeps trying to guess prices and exact times, and that's difficult. So Greg D, don't believe Harry Dent. The cost to produce gold will keep the price above 1,200. Yeah, the problem I have with Harry Dent is that he doesn't. He looks at, you know, he goes back to the Great Depression, and he basically considers what the dollar was then the same as today. But he forgets that during the Great Depression, the dollar was gold. And he seems to think now that if we have an implosion or a collapse, that the dollar will go up and gold will go down. But the dollar might go up, but gold will go up as well, because gold does well in a hyperinflation or in a deflationary collapse as well. Because in the deflationary collapse, a lot of the banks fail. So why do you want to, you know, that's the thing. I don't think he understands the fact that the dollar today is not the same as it was in the Great Depression. But some of his theories about the demographics and his studies are quite interesting. Lakes 59 Mark says Jim Grant is 100% smart guy in my. Yeah, I like Jim Grant, the interest rate observer, isn't he? I think he's a good guy. Trainwreck 1993. Bix Weir says America has a major deposit in the Grand Canyon of gold. Grand Canyon of gold. I've heard that theory already, but I'm sorry, I need proof. You Rebel Lucy, Bix Weir is delusional. You know, a lot of the things, I don't dislike Bix Weir, but sometimes he goes off into fantasy world. But a lot of his analysis is good. Marcus Yeager, what do you think of Deutsche Bank being down today, down around 35% year to date? I haven't really followed Deutsche Bank too much. Let's have a look, see what they're doing. Yeah, Deutsche Bank, you know, they're just, as I said before, they're only the tip of the iceberg. All the other banks in the same boat. Deutsche Bank is not doing as well, but if Deutsche Bank goes, everyone goes. So they'll try to keep it, you know, it's a zombie bank. Trainwreck 1993, enough gold in the Grand Canyon to make all gold worthless. We'll have, I don't know. OG, what percentage of someone's portfolio do you recommend for metals, crypto, and fiat? Well, fiat, 0. Metals, more like 80%, and then maybe crypto 20. That's how I would look at it. It's not advice, but fiat, just enough to, you know, to live your life, to pay expenses, but not to invest, not fiat. S. Walker, yeah, the banks are hitting gold and silver down again. Well, silver's holding on. I think silver's unchanged, but gold, yeah, it's frustrating. But I'm not concerned. Nick, a budget time in March 2019, the UK national debt is estimated to be 1.844 trillion. Yeah, and that doesn't take into account, I think, 500 billion that they borrowed to bail out the banks. They keep that like in the as a footnote. So I would say that national debt is a lot more than it's more like 2.5 trillion. Mary, do you follow Kim.com and him building an alternate internet, censorship free social media? No, I've heard of Kim.com, but I haven't followed it. Sorry. S. Walker, Nick, the UK is broke. Yeah, not only the UK, the US, the whole of Europe, they're all broke. Even Germany, because Germany and even the creditor nations, they've lent so much money to countries that are broke. So JJ, what do you think about Trump's Space Force? Yeah, I spoke about that earlier in the live stream. I think it's a joke. Yeah, I think he might even be trolling NASA and people who, yeah, I think it's a joke. And if anything, it's more, it's going to push up government spending. I think that's what he's trying to do because he knows the economy is imploding. I think it's a waste, really. Tim Wilkinson, love your channel. Good job. Thanks, Tim. Daryl Lowry, new question. How silver, how WI silver revalue relative, how will silver revalue relative to gold? It will outperform gold, when the bull market in gold accelerates, because the precious metals did bottom at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, but they're still being kept down. But when they start moving up again, silver will do better. It usually does. Slofton 877, what would happen if the banks go belly up and you have loans from the bank? How would they come after you? Well, if it was a systemic collapse, everything would collapse. Maybe you would get away with it, but you never know. It's risky, to take a lot of debt and expect a complete implosion. I was reading some guy, he's called Marshall Swing. He's like on Silver Doctors, and he's calling for a total implosion of the system, economic collapse, financial collapse in July, like July 20th to 27th. And he said he's going to take out a loan to buy silver. So, I personally would not get involved in borrowing money. You don't want to be involved with criminals. So the best thing to do, in my opinion, is not to do business with them. T. Hamilton, aside from investing in physical precious metals, are you aware of any miners where you can buy dividend-bearing shares not through a brokerage? To be honest, I don't know how you can do that not through a brokerage. You might be able to contact, the companies and ask them if you could buy their shares privately with them. But I have some mining stocks in my SIP, which is like a pension, private pension, but it's through a broker, unfortunately. Eric Lower, NASA was founded by Satanists. All space photos are CGI anyway. Yeah, I mean, you could be right. I have, I agree with you. Richard Mack makes a good point. If you had loans outstanding from a collapsed bank, whoever bought the assets would also buy your loans and you would owe them. Yeah. But the other thing is, if that were to happen, you could see societal unrest and they might not get away with doing that. So who knows? Eugene Platten, what services do you recommend for investing in gold and silver, but spending using a debit card attached to it? Well, I have, you could do goldmoney.com, or in the UK, there's a service called Glint, Glint. It's an app. I have a little bit of gold with them, not much, and I can spend it, but I don't spend it. I've left it in there, but I have a debit card with them, or credit card, if you want to call it. Clown with Twitter account. Why your Austrian economic school opposed mathematical use in the economy? Well, because they believe that the economy is based on human action and emotions, and that it's not like a hard science like mathematics. So that's why. And I believe in that. Unlike the PhD economists that we have, they think they know better than 7 billion people how to like manage the economy. They think they can tinker with interest rates, with government spending. The Austrians, their idea is that leave it to the economy, leave it to the individual. The best regulator for the economy are prices in the free market. That's why, and yeah, you don't need mathematics. The 10-year yield, I guess, will hurt the stock market at what percentage? I think above 3%. That's why they've been trying to keep it, below 3%. Maybe, yeah. I haven't seen where we are right now. Let's have a look. Yeah, the 10-year yield has gone back up today. Is at 294. The recent high was around 313. So yeah, if we get back above 3%, I think it will already put a little bit of pressure on the market. M. Cesar DeCamo, I'm an Echo. Great show. I just wanted to add something. Gold is in a free fall. It seems like it's going to test and break the lows at 10,050, 1,000. Well, I think the low was 1,046, and I would not be surprised if it reaches 500s. Well, that's fine. I don't think it will. It doesn't make sense with all the debt they've created in the last 10 years. I don't see gold. If it could go to 500 gold, but then everything else would be a lot lower, and gold would hold its purchasing power. Gold is the paper gold price is in a free fall, but if you look at central banks around the world, especially in the East, they're accumulating real gold. Yeah. JJ Monaco, what you think Trump is trolling NASA? Why? I don't understand. Why? Because people, I think there's a lot of people who think NASA is a complete, fraud. And for Trump to come out and say, "Oh, we're going to have a space force," he could be, because that's the kind of person he is. Maybe he's using that to actually expose NASA. Jur Oji, why do you have British and Canadian pillow? Well, the British pillow, we've had it for a while because I live in the UK, and I have an American pillow as well and a Canadian. When I started doing my videos, I had the British pillow, and like the viewer said, "Oh, why don't you get an American one or a Canadian?" So that's why, for the viewers of the channel. Max Zager, thank you for the chat. I have to go. Oh, no problem. Thank you for being here. Eric Lower, yeah, I agree about NASA. Yes, Lofton 877. Space Force is a tax scheme because it's going to tax more or borrow even more to create more jobs for the military industrial complex to keep the economy from imploding even more. John Callan, would you abolish the Bank of England? Yes, I would. But they've been around for so long, over 300 years. They've got a lot of influence and power. So, yeah. But who knows? And Andre de la Fontaine, Trump to meet the Queen next month. Why? I don't know. You have to ask them. Ask them why they're going to meet. I don't really care. Let them meet. Donald Bump. Can't they just keep printing money worldwide and keep the scheme going for the next 100 years if they just print at the same time the money devalues at a steady rate? Well, people will eventually lose confidence in the money because money has to be something that has value. That's the whole thing about money, even if it's just intrinsic value. Chung Chen Mario, when do we get our free UBI, universal basic income? I don't think there's anything, there's no such thing as a free lunch, Chung or Chung Chen. So I don't believe in it. Chris Bell, could we replace you with Mark? Could we replace you with Mark Carney? Uh, yeah, I would take the job, but I don't think I'd put the country back on a gold standard. I don't think I'd be very popular as Bank of England governor. I put the country back on a gold standard and then, close shop. Maybe turn the Bank of England, the head office in Threadneedle Street, into a brand new hotel or a museum, something like that. OG Monaco for prime minister. Again, I don't want to be prime minister, really. They wouldn't want me. I'd be like Ron Paul. GTFO YouTube. What do you think will happen with automation and loss of jobs? Well, yeah, people, it is concerning, a lot of the automation, but if you look back, 150 years, people adapt, people find jobs. Prior to the automobile, people used horses, and blacksmiths, probably lost a lot of jobs when cars started being made. But then people find jobs elsewhere. It's painful when it's happening, but over the long run, it should be all right. Gary Abbott, Monaco, you're awesome. I'm surprised this seems to be positive on crypto. Are you familiar with how quantum computing breaks it? There's a good article by MIT. Yeah, I've heard about quantum computing, that eventually it could break the cryptographic codes. That is something that could happen. Yeah. So, but I think it's going to take a few years. So eventually, yeah, people could, with all the quantum computers, which are really powerful, they could break codes. Slofton 877. If you don't have it in your hands, you don't own it. That's right. Nunia Business. My uncle is Gordon England's Former Deputy Secretary of Defense. I grew up in a family full of government employees and computer geeks. Mark Walsh, quantum computing is at least 25 years away. Stop fudding. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's right. We're 25 years away, but gold and silver is still around after 5,000 years. So will Bitcoin be, safe in 25 years? And of course, the people who, the program, the code for Bitcoin could evolve and, be immune to quantum computing. So you never know. Over here, Mary, what currencies are you holding in your financial investment portfolio? Well, I hold gold and silver, and I guess being the UK, my house is, if I were to sell it, it would be pounds, and I have some cryptos. Yeah. DAX, they could make stronger encryption first. Yeah. Don't troll on Shambos. Love you, Mario. Me mum's from Kettering, married a bloody Yank. I'm the result. Chris Belt, such an interesting channel, very informative, probably many more views than the BBC, the British Brainwashing Corporation, right, Chris? One interesting thing about the BBC a few years ago, one of the guys on the board of the BBC, the board of governors or whatever they call it, was a guy called Marcus Agius, Agius. He also happened to be chairman of Barclays Bank, and guess who his father-in-law is a Rothschild. So yeah, they even control the BBC. M says of the Carmo, delegated proof of stake is not vulnerable to quantum computers. EOS is safe. Well, I mean, I like EOS. A lot of people know that I've been, I've put some money into EOS, so let's hope they do well. You go, me too. Good afternoon, Mario. Do you think China will retaliate the 10% of 200 billion tariff? From what I read yesterday, yeah, they probably will. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it. But in a trade war, that's what happens. You do something to me, I'll do something to you. It becomes like a tennis game, back and forth. Or in China's case, ping pong. M640, how long this debt bubble could go on for? Could we have a market crash only in 2020 or later? Nobody knows the future. No, we don't. What we know, M640, is that it's not sustainable and that one day it will all collapse. Very difficult to say when. Eric Lower, Monaco, have you seen The Greatest Story Never Told? Yeah, I did see that. I have seen that. Yeah, I even think I've seen it a couple of times. It's really interesting. It just goes to show how, the victors write the history. IK, hi Mario, great show, greeting from Dublin. Oh, hi IK, nice to see you here. I haven't been to Dublin. I've been to Northern Ireland. I went to Belfast, and because I have some friends, Port Stewart up in Northern Ireland. I do have a cousin though who's married and lives in Dublin. So maybe I need to go and visit him soon. Andre de La Fontaine, have you read the book Anastasia by Vladimir Meager? If not, I highly recommend you check it out. Is that about the Romanovs, Andre? One thing about the czars and the Romanovs that I read and that I've heard, I forgot where, but there's so much stuff that you read and watch, is that the reason they killed the whole royal family in Russia is because they had a lot of gold or money with the US banks. So, and when were they killed? 1917, wasn't it? Or 1918? So all that money that they had with US banks, I think the Tsar of Russia was one of the richest men in the world. It all was stuck. There's no heir for that money, all that gold. And some people think that that helped finance the Federal Reserve, which had just started in 1914. So I don't know if that's what the book is about, Anastasia, but I'll look into that. Oh, he says no, but at least you got me into the subject of the Federal Reserve and the Romanovs, which I think is a bit related. But I'll look into that, Anastasia. How many suicides do you think will happen by the banking elite people when the collapse is a fact? Well, a few years ago, there were a lot of people being sued, bankers dying. Do you remember? So I think it would be huge, if what we think will happen happens. Corrado Spataro, hello, very good job. My question, how much silver and gold should a family of 5 have if SHTF announces, please? Thank you. Well, if you have a SHTF, it won't be, I think it will be hard for a few months. So you have to just work out how much you spend in fiat right now, and maybe extrapolate a little bit how much silver will be worth. So, if you need to buy, for example, now, let's say 100 ounces to live as a family of 5 today, if things implode, you might actually just need, I don't know, 20. So maybe that's the way, whatever you need today in silver, and you can buy maybe a fifth less. Because if things do get ugly, silver should help you. So that's the way to look at it, maybe. Typo, do you think new country bills are already ready in the USA? Do you mean like banknotes or dollar bills? I don't know. I mean, I remember in 2011 and 12 when the euro almost collapsed, there were a lot of stories that the German government was printing Deutschmarks, that they were ready for a collapse of the euro. I don't know if that I couldn't say about the US. Gary Abbott, can you do a show in the future about how much GDP growth came from deficit spending over recent years? I wonder if there would have been any GDP growth if they were balanced budgets. Yeah, Gary, that's a really interesting topic. I've made videos about it. And basically, without the deficits, especially in the UK and the US, we'd have negative GDP because they calculate government spending into the GDP. So if government spends more than they take in, let's say by 5%, and GDP grows by 2%, that means the real GDP is negative 3%. But yeah, I will do, maybe I'll do it on Sunday. We can talk about GDP on Sunday. Yeah, we'll do that, Gary. Over here, have you reached out to anyone to do an interview with them, or has anyone contacted you to do an interview? Well, no, no one. I don't try to reach out to people to do interviews. If they want to interview me, they'll contact me. I'm doing an interview tomorrow with EOS UK, their block producer candidate. I don't think they were elected in the top 21. I'm going to talk to EOS UK tomorrow, and I'll publish the interview in the YouTube channel. But no, I haven't had anyone else contact me about doing interviews over here. Chris Bell, superb channel, thank you. Paul Kane, couldn't the Space Force mine on the moon? Well, they could, but they have to get to the moon first. And they have to get through the Van Allen radiation belt that's around the Earth that apparently we can't get through anymore. But we could get through in the late 60s, early 70s, but now we can't. OG, do you think 2018 is the big one? You know, a lot of people have been trying to forecast 2012 and the world, and then you had the Shemitah in 2015. Yeah, people don't tend to. I try to not, think too much about these things because you got to live your life. But it's possible. We'll have to see. I mean, we're halfway through the year. Actually, exactly today. It's like, well, it was a few days ago, but still have some time. T. Hamilton, I agree with you. Yeah, we've got a lot more problems on this planet than have to worry about going to the moon. Richard Mack, the Van Allen radiation belt is the firmament. Yeah, why not? Noonia business, I'll let you into a little secret. The world is flat. Well, I have looked, I have watched for the last few years a lot of videos of a lot of the proof. A lot of it is quite compelling. Yeah, I think it's they could be right. It seems outrageous to say that, but they've lied to us about so many things. I wouldn't be surprised. Gur Oji, thank you for the donation, Norwegian krona. I appreciate it on the super chat. GTFO YouTube, do you think the fact that the economic turmoil is often referenced in the mainstream could be a sign that the Ponzi will last a little longer? It could be, because the mainstream, they're kind of always wrong. People say, oh, if it's in the cover of Time magazine, the opposite will happen. So yeah, that's true. Over here, has the US government at any time held foreign currency in reserve? Not in the last 100 years, I would say, because it's been the reserve currency. I think they might have a little bit of foreign currency, but not that much. They don't need it because the dollar they can use dollars. And that's the exorbitant privilege. They don't have to earn foreign currency. You go to me too. So Mario, 2 questions. What do you think Martin Armstrong and his theory that investors will stop buying bonds and buy more stocks, taking the stock market much higher before 2020? I'm not too sure about that. His theory is that confidence will be lost in governments, and it will be money will move to the private sector. The thing is that bonds determine the price of money or interest rates. And the reason why the stock market and stock has gone up so much in the last 10 years is because interest rates have been driven down. So if bonds collapse, interest rates will go up. And I think that's going to hammer stock prices. So I'm not too sure he's right about that. Chris Bell, why the smackdown of silver last Friday? Well, because it was breaking out, and I think, yeah, they didn't want it to break out. It was breaking out of this triangle, and that's what they do, the bullion banks. Richard Mack, without being able to personally leave the Earth to see it from perspective, I can't say it's round or flat. I tend to agree, and a lot of the photos we have from high up, high up above, they've got the lenses are kind of round, so it looks like the Earth is round. So who knows? Nuno Simons, what do you think about Bix Weir's Road to ETHEREUM? That tons of gold hidden in the Grand Canyon. I personally think it's fantasy, Nuno. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm gonna call it a day now. Been over an hour here, so I'm just gonna take one or two more questions, and then yeah, let's see. T. Hamilton. At this point, central banks and the Exchange Stabilization Fund are in 100% control of any paper value market. In my opinion, they can shift any market to their advantage. Yeah, I agree with that, T. Hamilton. But one day, a value will be restored to all assets. I don't think they can keep it going forever. Let's see. Gary Abbott, please explain why Japan doesn't see hyperinflation. For the life of me, I can't figure it out. Yeah, that's a good one, because I think it's because Japanese save a lot of money, and they basically finance the government. All the Japanese debt is domestically owned, so they it's not owned by foreigners. So I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see hyperinflation in Japan. And Japan, yeah, it is perplexing. I agree with you. Maybe one day we will see it. It will happen overnight, and everything will collapse. Okay, thank you everyone for showing up. I appreciate your presence, and I really enjoy these chats. I will be doing one on Sunday night. I think I'll do I'll talk about GDP and how it really covers up the fact that the economies are not doing well because of government spending. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good evening or good morning wherever you are. Take care. Bye.